This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are holding a piece of physical history right in your hands.
Okay.
But I'm not talking about, a grand towering marble monument.
Right.
And I'm not asking you to picture a jeweled crown locked behind some thick museum glass or a legendary sword pulled from a stone.
The fun stuff.
Exactly, the shiny stuff. I want you to imagine something much, much more mundane.
Okay, what are we talking about?
Picture a crumpled, irregularly shaped, discarded scrap of paper.
A piece of trash.
Literal trash, a piece of literal garbage that someone tossed away without a second thought centuries ago.
Yeah.
Now hold that image in your mind and imagine finding out that this tiny, messy piece of ancient garbage actually proves that a legendary mythical king, a figure people honestly thought was just a folklore story, was a real, living, breathing person.
It really is. It's the ultimate archaeological fantasy. I mean, you can spend your entire academic career looking for monumental temples or massive royal tombs.
And you'll come up empty.
Exactly. And then the biggest, most paradigm-shifting revelation comes from the ancient equivalent of a crumpled-up grocery receipt found in a literal dumpster.
And that is the exact journey we're taking today. We have a massive stack of research in front of us.
We really do.
Specifically, we're focusing on this truly phenomenal research article published in Azania, Archaeological Research in Africa.
Yes, incredible paper.
The core of our mission for this deep dive is to explore how a newly excavated Arabic document from Old Dongola, which is located in modern-day Sudan, is illuminating what historians have long called a dark age.
Right.
We're going to look at how a seemingly mundane order for some sheep and a few shirts completely rewrites our understanding of a pre-colonial African king.
It's wild.
It changes how we should look at history as a whole, honestly.
To really grasp the magnitude of this scrap of paper, though, we need to set the stage.
Yeah, let's zoom in. Where are we?
We are zooming into the Middle Nile Valley. The time frame is the 16th and 17th centuries.
Right.
And if you look at the broader historical timeline of this region, this is a highly fragmented, incredibly transitional period.
Because before this, there was a massive power there. Right?
Exactly. For hundreds of years prior, this area was dominated by the great Christian kingdom of Makuria. Makuria was a powerhouse. It had its vibrant capital right at Old Dongola. It built these massive cathedrals, and it famously held off early Islamic expansion for centuries.
Right, through that really unique treaty.
A Bikat,
Yeah.
yes. It was this long-lasting non-aggression pact. But by the 14th century, Makuria had collapsed.
And that collapse leaves this massive, just this gaping power vacuum in the region.
Precise.
The central authority totally shatters. And in the wake of that, you get a deeply complex political landscape. The region finds itself wedged between two massive spheres of influence.
It's a real squeeze.
Yeah. To the north, you have the expanding power of Ottoman Egypt pushing down the Nile.
And to the south.
To the south, rising up, you have the Funj Sultanate, which is also known as the Sultanate of Sennar. And right there in the middle, caught between these two heavyweights, is Old Dongola.
And the city doesn't just disappear when the Makurian kingdom falls.
No, people still live there.
Right. It has to transition, it has to shift, and navigate this entirely new reality.
Which is why historians have frequently referred to this specific transitional window, roughly spanning the 14th to the 18th centuries, as a dark age for Sudanese history.
Right, but we should clarify that. When academics use the term dark age here, they aren't passing a moral judgment on the society.
No, they mean we are quite literally in the dark.
The documentary evidence just dries up.
Exactly. We know a tremendous amount about the medieval Christian period because of the rich archaeological record and the church texts.
Yep.
We also know a lot about the later periods, starting with the Turco-Egyptian conquest of Sudan in the 1820s because of colonial records.
We have mountains of paperwork from them.
But this middle era, it has been a massive, frustrating question mark.
We've had to rely on these tiny scattered fragments of accounts from foreign travelers passing through, or oral histories recorded much, much later.
Which are notoriously tricky to verify.
Extremely. We knew it was an era marked by accelerating Arabization and Islamization. as nomadic Arab groups moved into the region and intermingled with the local Nubian populations.
But the actual on-the-ground details of how society functioned.
Totally blank. How people governed themselves or how they traded. It's incredibly fuzzy.
Until, of course, a Polish archaeological expedition decided to start digging in the rubbish heaps of Old Dongola.
Which brings us to the physical space of the discovery itself. The geography of Old Dongola is striking.
Paint a picture for us.
Well, it's situated on this commanding rocky outcrop on the eastern bank of the Nile. It sits right near the mouth of the Wadi Howar.
And the Wadi Howar is a dried riverbed, right?
It is now, but historically it's crucial to understand here because it wasn't just a dried riverbed. It was a major bustling trade route leading westward into Darfur and other sub-Saharan regions.
So it's an intersection.
Exactly. So Old Dongola was perfectly positioned as an essential way station. If you were a merchant traveling the trade routes from Cairo all the way down to Sennar, you stopped at Old Dongola.
I want to take you, the listener, right into that space. Since 2018, there has been this fascinating archaeological initiative called the UMMA Project.
UMMA?
Yeah, that stands for Urban Metamorphosis of the Community of a Medieval African Capital City.
It's a mouthful, but the work is incredible.
It is. And they didn't just show up with shovels and start guessing where to dig.
No, you can't really do that anymore.
Right. They use advanced non-invasive techniques, specifically magnetic and ground-penetrating radar.
GPR.
Exactly. So before they even turn over a single spade of dirt, they are shooting electromagnetic pulses into the ground.
It's basically an X-ray of the desert.
Yeah. These pulses bounce back differently depending on what's buried down there, allowing the team to map out the ghost of the ancient urban landscape.
So they can see the differences between solid mud brick walls, open courtyards, and crucially deep pits filled with centuries of debris.
And that radar mapping led them directly to the scene of our discovery today, a sprawling complex they designated as Building A1.
But what makes Building 8.1 so compelling isn't just the radar data, it's what the local people actually call it.
The oral tradition.
Right. The local community has passed down stories referring to the ruins of this specific building as the House of the Mek.
The House of the Mek. And the word Mek, or Mak, is an indigenous title, right?
Yes. During the late pre-colonial period under the Funchal Sultanate, a Mek was a minor ruler or a vassal king.
Like a provincial governor with royal blood.
Exactly. This was a prestigious rank sitting just below the Sultan of Sennar himself or the major provincial governors. So the local community passing down knowledge through generations has literally been pointing at this mound of dirt and saying, a king lived here.
Which is amazing that the oral history survived that long.
It is. And when the archaeologists actually started excavating the site, the physical evidence they uncovered completely corroborated that local tradition.
The architecture alone gave it away.
Right away. The architecture of Building 8.1 stands out immediately. It is substantially larger and far more complex than the typical housing units from this period found elsewhere in the citadel.
But curiously, it doesn't feature the heavy defensive fortifications, the Korfa, that you typically see in elite houses further north.
Right. The Korpa is usually a dead giveaway for an elite residence up in the Third Cataract Zone.
But it makes sense that it's missing here because it didn't need its own mini fortress walls. It was already nestled safely inside the massive pre-existing perimeter wall of the old Dongola citadel.
It was protected by the city itself.
Yeah, but the architecture isn't even the most revealing part.
Not at all.
The true gold mine of this excavation was found in the abandoned rooms of this massive compound, specifically, like we mentioned, in the rubbish heaps.
The trash.
The trash. And the artifacts pulled from those heaps are astonishing.
They really are. When we contextualize these items within the broader social structure of the Funge period, they scream absolute elite status.
Yeah, the people living in this house were at the very apex of the social hierarchy.
Just looking at the inventory list from the Azania paper is staggering. We are talking about fragments of imported silk.
Silk.
Silk. We have finely woven linen shirts. There are remnants of leather shoes.
They found a dagger handle crafted from either ivory or rhinoceros horn.
There's a gold ring.
And perhaps most surprisingly, they found lead musket balls and a beautifully carved cattle horn gunpowder flask.
Right. Now, I can hear someone thinking, finding a piece of a linen shirt in the trash doesn't immediately sound like the archaeological discovery of the century.
Yeah, we throw away old shirts all the time.
But that assumption is exactly why understanding the societal rules of the time is so important. The Funj Sultanate operated under incredibly strict sumptuary laws.
Sumptuary laws, let's dig into that.
These were legally enforced regulations that dictated exactly what a person was allowed to wear, own, or consume based entirely on their social class.
So it's not just a matter of fashion?
Not at all. In this specific society, wearing fabrics like linen, fine cotton, and particularly silk was a privilege strictly legally restricted to the highest aristocracy.
It wasn't a matter of simply saving up enough money to buy a nice shirt from a traveling merchant.
No, if you were a commoner and you managed to get your hands on a silk garment, you couldn't wear it.
Doing so would be a direct illegal challenge to the political order. You'd be punished.
Exactly. And European travelers from that era provided detailed accounts of this. Men like Theodor Crump.
He was a Bavarian missionary, right?
Yes, he traveled through the region in 1701, and later Johannes Burckhardt. They explicitly documented these visual hierarchies. They noted that specific textiles, particularly blue-dyed fabrics and certain checked patterns, were worn exclusively by the Nubian elites.
Clothing was a visible manifestation of power.
Exactly. So finding silk and linen in the trash of Building 8.1 is a neon sign pointing to royalty.
And then you have the firearms, the musket balls, and the cattle horn gunpowder flask. I find this detail particularly fascinating because it completely upends how we usually think about historical weaponry.
It does. In pre-colonial Nubia, firearms were not primarily utilized as tactical weapons for mass warfare.
Because they were kind of terrible in the desert.
They were awful. They were slow to reload, prone to misfiring, the sand got in the mechanisms, and the powder could easily be ruined by the elements.
Right. So if they aren't for war, what are they for?
Their true value was as the ultimate, undeniable status symbol. The Funj sultans held a strict monopoly on the importation and distribution of firearms.
They controlled the supply completely.
Entirely, they would selectively hand them out as royal gifts to trusted vassals, local rulers, and key allies.
So possessing a gun meant you had a direct personal relationship with the central authority of the sultanate.
You were part of the 1% of the 1%.
The combination of all these artifacts, the gold, the restricted silk, the rhino horn, the royal monopoly firearms, it leaves absolutely no doubt. The local oral tradition was dead on. This was the House of the Mek.
And nestled among all those flashy, undeniable status symbols, deep in the stratigraphy of a room the archaeologists designated as U-128, the team uncovered 23 paper documents.
Paper in a rubbish heap.
I know. The survival of these documents borders on the miraculous. We are talking about highly delicate organic material.
Yeah, paper doesn't usually last 400 years in a trash pit.
Exactly, exposed to the elements, insects, decay. But there they were. Some of the recovered documents were just tiny, unreadable shreds. Others were magic amulets, which were actually quite common for this region.
Well, like small pieces of paper inscribed with prayers or spells.
Yeah, meant to be folded up and worn in a leather pouch for protection. And there were a few fragmented legal notes. But the crown jewel of this stash, sitting right in the middle of the debris, was one specific text. The researchers refer to it simply as the King's Order.
The physical description of this paper in the article is so vivid. It's not some grand, beautiful parchment with illuminated lettering.
Far from it.
It's an irregularly shaped piece of paper. The edges are rough and uneven. There are no straight cut lines.
Which tells the researchers immediately that this was not a formal public document prepared by a sophisticated state archive.
And there are no watermarks visible on the paper. That's a huge clue, right?
It is. The lack of a watermark is an interesting clue in itself. During the Funj period, high-quality paper was often imported at great expense from Europe, specifically from mills in Italy or France.
So it's traveling all the way down through the Mediterranean, into Egypt, and then down the Nile trade routes.
Exactly. And that imported paper almost always bore distinct watermarks. The absence of one here, combined with the messy, irregular shape, strongly suggests we are looking at a scrap.
Just a leftover bit.
Right. It might be a rough draft, a leftover piece trimmed from a larger sheet, or just a very informal, everyday notepad.
And the informality of it is what makes it so incredibly valuable to us today. When historians read grand state charters, like the formal Funj land grants that have survived from the 18th century, they are reading highly stylized, formulaic legal language.
It's rigid. It's PR for the king.
Exactly. But this little scrap from Old Dongola pulls back the curtain. It shows us the messy, unfiltered, everyday reality of how people in this administration actually communicated with one another.
And messy is definitely the operative word, especially when you analyze the linguistics. The scribe who physically penned the letter left his name at the bottom, Hamad.
Good old Hamad.
And Hamad was clearly trying his best, but his grasp of classical Arabic leaves a lot to be desired.
I love Hamad. He feels so human. Reading the linguistic breakdown of his writing is like looking over the shoulder of an intern who is desperately trying to type out a memo for the CEO and just keeps making grammatical typos.
It's a linguist's dream, though, because it captures a society in the exact messy moment of transition.
Right, because Old Dongola was fundamentally a Nubian-speaking culture.
Yes, Nubian was the spoken language, but they were gradually adopting Arabic for administration and religion. Hamad hasn't fully mastered the intricate rules of classical Arabic.
What kind of mistakes does he make?
He makes consistent, fascinating errors. For example, he uses possessive pronouns incorrectly, failing to make the proper grammatical distinctions for number and gender.
He's just kind of winging it.
Pretty much. He frequently drops the glottal stop known as the hamza in Arabic. So the formal classical word yajiuka, which means he comes to you, is written as the much more colloquial street-level yajika.
He also squishes his letters together in a really chaotic way. The researchers noted that his handwriting is so cramped that an aleph often ends up looking identical to a lamb.
He's writing fast.
He's writing fast, he's writing informally, and he's definitely not worried about a grammar teacher grading his work. But the biggest structural mistake he makes is right at the very beginning of the document.
Oh yeah, this is massive.
He completely skips the basmala.
Skipping the basmala is a massive indicator of the document's nature. The basmala is the foundational Islamic phrase, "In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful."
And you're supposed to put that on everything, right?
Everything. In the Islamic world, starting virtually any formal written document with that phrase was essentially mandatory. It was standard operating procedure for everything from peace treaties to basic legal contracts.
The fact that Hamad bypasses it entirely reinforces the idea that this isn't a proclamation meant for the public archive.
It's an internal memo. It's the 16th century equivalent of a quick text message or a sticky note left on a colleague's desk.
But the contents of the sticky note are explosive. Because despite the bad grammar and the missing basmala, the very first line of the document clearly identifies the sender.
Yes, it does.
It reads, "From King Koshkosh to Kid."
King Koshkosh.
When the archaeologists translated that name, King Koshkosh, it sent shockwaves through the historical community.
To fully appreciate the magnitude of that name, you have to understand that prior to this scrap of paper being pulled out of the dirt, King Koshkosh was largely considered a ghost.
A myth.
Yeah, he was a semi-legendary figure, a name echoing purely from folklore and oral traditions.
This is where I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
We find a crumpled piece of paper in a trash heap. It has the name King Koshkosh on it. How do historians look at that and immediately know this is the legendary king and not just some local merchant who happened to share the same name? Or maybe it's just a scribe practicing his handwriting by making up a fake letter.
That's a crucial question. You can't just take one scrap at face value. The authentication comes from multiple overlapping layers of evidence.
Okay, it's layer one.
First, you have the stratigraphic context. The document was found deeply buried in an undisturbed layer of a rubbish pit within a massive, elite architectural compound.
So it's genuinely old and from a rich house.
Right. Second, the document was found surrounded by highly restricted sumptuary items, the silk, the gold, the firearms, which proves the inhabitants of this specific layer possessed royal authority.
Okay, layer three.
Third, the language used in the document, despite Hamad's poor grammar, utilizes specific imperative commands that denote a hierarchical relationship where the sender has absolute authority over the recipient.
And then there's the dating.
Exactly. The archaeological layer itself, through relative dating of the pottery and other artifacts, aligns perfectly with the late 16th or early 17th century.
Which perfectly matches the only other major historical source where the name Koshkosh appears.
Yes, a very famous text called the Tabakat.
Let's talk about the Tabakat because it is such a wild document.
It really is.
Compiled in the 18th century by a scholar named Wad Defella, the Tabakat is essentially a massive biographical dictionary, but it is not a dry, objective history textbook.
Far from it.
It is a book entirely focused on Sudanese saints, holy men, Sufi mystics, and their literal supernatural miracles.
It is pure hagiography. It is a text designed to elevate the spiritual legacy of these charismatic preachers who spread Islam through the region. In the Tabakat, Koshkosh is barely mentioned as a historical ruler. He is primarily referenced as a genealogical anchor point.
He's someone's granddad.
Right. He is noted as the great-grandfather of a very famous sheikh named Hilali.
And the story surrounding his lineage in the Tabaqat is basically a fairy tale. It recounts how King Hassan, who was Kashqash's son, married his unnamed royal daughter to a deeply respected itinerant holy man named Suwar al-Dahab.
And then tragedy strikes.
Right. The story goes that when Suwar al-Dahab tragically died, leaving the young princess alone with their infant son Hilali, the political succession was threatened. The Tabaqat claims the princess had to perform a literal divine miracle to protect her son's inheritance and secure his future as a great sheikh.
So you have generations of modern historians reading the Tabaqat and naturally feeling highly skeptical.
Yeah, you read about miracles and you think, okay, this is a metaphor.
Exactly. They see a narrative overflowing with divine intervention and miraculous events, and they ask the logical question, is this King Kashqash actually a real historical person?
Or did the author simply invent a mythological royal ancestor to make these holy men seem more legitimate and prestigious?
Right. And then, centuries later, an archaeologist brushes the dirt off a crumpled piece of trash in Old Dongola and reads, from King Kashqash.
It bridges the gap between myth and reality in an instant. It proves that this legendary figure associated with hagiographic miracles and divine lineage was a real guy sitting at a desk dictating memos to his terrible scribe Hamad about organizing his livestock.
It grounds the myth in undeniable administrative reality. It also provides a vital chronological anchor.
Because we have other sources to line it up with.
Yes, we know from other independent sources, such as the writings of the Ottoman traveler Evliya Çelebi, who journeyed through Nubia in the 1670s, that the holy man Suwar al-Dahab was genuinely active in the early to mid-17th century.
So if we work backward genealogically...
Exactly. If Kashqash is the grandfather of that generation, we can confidently place King Kashqash's active reign right around the late 16th or very early 17th century. Everything aligns perfectly.
Okay, so we have the sender established, the very real King Kashqash. We have our scribbling scribe, Hamad. But who else exists in this little cinematic universe captured on a piece of paper?
The document outlines a fascinating cast of characters.
The order itself is addressed to a man named Khidr. Given the tone of the letter, Khidr is clearly a trusted subordinate, a steward, or some sort of royal middleman handling the king's affairs.
The name Khidr provides another tantalizing connection to the Tabaqat. The Biographical Dictionary actually mentions a remarkably wealthy man living in Dongola named Khidr during this approximate time frame.
There is a specific anecdote where a prominent sheikh approaches Khidr and urges him to donate 100 piastres to a group of holy men, promising that in return, God will grant him a lifespan of 100 years.
Right, I remember this story. Khidr agrees initially, but then he goes home, and his family essentially talks him out of it, saying it's too much money.
Typical.
So he goes back and only donates 11 piastres. And according to the Tabaqat, he dies exactly 11 years later.
Wow. It's a classic morality tale about greed versus faith. Now, can we definitively prove that the Khidr in the Tabaqat is the exact same Khidr receiving this letter from King Kashqash?
No, we can't.
No.
But it strongly demonstrates that a man by that name was operating in the very highest echelons of wealth and administrative power in Dongola at that specific moment in history.
Moving on, the letter introduces two more individuals who are central to the transaction. One is named Muhammad al-Arab, who is the one bringing the goods into town. The other is a man named Abd al-Jabir, who appears to be a local resident holding on to some of the king's assets.
The name Abd al-Jabir is a point of deep intrigue for the researchers. In standard classical Arabic, the name should technically be written as Abd al-Jabbar, which translates to servant of the Almighty, referencing one of the names of God in Islam.
But it's written Jabir here.
Yes. However, the specific spelling used here, Jabir, connects directly to a tremendously famous and powerful clan of Sudanese holy men known as the Alad Jabir.
Who are the Alad Jabir?
They were foundational figures in the Islamization of the region. The Alad Jabir clan traced their lineage and their authority all the way back to the very first wave of Muslim teachers and scholars who established themselves in Dongola following the collapse of Christian Makuria.
So they were the intellectual and spiritual elite.
Exactly. Seeing that name in a royal administrative document highlights the deeply intertwined nature of the local political elite, the religious authorities, and the everyday governance of the city.
We have our cast of characters. Now let's unpack the actual micro-politics of this transaction because the detective work the researchers do here is phenomenal.
It really is.
The document has writing on both sides. Here is the literal translation of the king's order. King Koshkosh tells his subordinate Khidr, as soon as the merchant, Muhammad al-Arab, comes to you, you must take from him 3 pieces of a specific mystery textile called ardwayat.
Ardwayat.
Right. In exchange for these textiles, Khidr, you must give the merchant a ewe and a lamb. Where's Khidr supposed to get the sheep? The king instructs him to go collect them from the local elite, Abd al-Jabir.
And then it continues on the back.
Then the king flips the paper over, and on the back he adds an addendum. He writes, oh, and Khidr, make sure you give Abd al-Jabir 3 pieces of mandafalras to compensate him for providing the sheep.
It is a perfectly enclosed, brilliant little triangle of trade. The king extracts goods from a merchant, pays for them using livestock acquired from a local elite, and then compensates the local elite with a different kind of good.
It's just smart management.
But the absolute key to unlocking the true political meaning of this transaction lies in identifying those mystery words. What on earth are ardwayat and mandafalras?
Well, let's start with ardwayat. The researchers in the Azania article go down a massive linguistic rabbit hole trying to figure this out.
It's a tough one.
The word is written using Arabic script, but it simply doesn't match any known standard classical Arabic word that makes sense in this context.
We know it has to be a physical good, and given the context of regional trade, it is almost certainly a textile. In the Sultanate of Sennar and throughout pre-colonial Sudan, cloth was frequently used as a medium of exchange.
It was essentially a standardized form of currency.
Yes, but the etymology of ardwayat is a puzzle. The researchers proposed 2 highly compelling theories.
The first theory connects it to Syria, right?
Yes. The first theory suggests the word is a corrupted, localized plural of the Arabic word ritav, which broadly means a cloak or a draped garment.
Okay, that makes sense.
The researchers looked further north into the Ottoman archives discovered at Khazar Ibrahim, a major fortress in Lower Nubia. Those Ottoman records frequently detail a standard length of cloth that was used as currency to pay soldiers.
And they called it something specific.
They called it hamawiya, which indicates the cloth originated from the Syrian city of Hama, famous for its cotton production.
So we have Syrian cotton traveling across the Mediterranean down through Egypt, past the Ottoman fortresses, and landing in the hands of a Nubian king in Old Dongola.
That alone shows an incredible level of globalized trade for a supposed dark age.
It's massive. But the second theory is even more fascinating because it involves linguistic ping pong.
The second theory is a beautiful example of how languages blend in a transitional society. It proposes that ardwayat is a reborrowed Nubian word.
How does that work?
In the local Dongolawi Nubian language, the term arda refers specifically to the warp of a weave in a loom. It is entirely possible that the standard Arabic word for width, which is ard, was initially absorbed into the local Nubian vocabulary to mean the warp of the cloth.
Okay, so Arabic to Nubian.
Over time, as Arabic became the dominant language of administration, that Nubianized word was borrowed back into the local Sudanese Arabic dialect, taking the plural form ardwayat.
It's like a linguistic footprint of a culture in metamorphosis. You have Arabic, Nubian, and potentially Ottoman trade influences all swirling together and landing on one piece of paper through the messy handwriting of Hamad the scribe.
It's a snapshot of a changing world.
But what about the payment going to the local guy? The king tells Khidr to take the sheep from Abd al-Jabir, but to compensate him by giving him 3 pieces of manduf alras.
This part of the document was actually heavily damaged. The ink was faded and the paper was degraded. The UMMA team had to use specialized infrared photography just to make the letters legible.
Wow. CSI Old Dongola.
Pretty much. When they finally deciphered it, it translated roughly to teased cotton of the head, or more simply, cotton headwear.
This is the moment where all those background facts we discussed earlier suddenly collide. You mentioned Theodore Crump, the European traveler who documented the sumptuary laws.
Let's recall exactly what Crump recorded. He explicitly documented that in Nubian society, wearing cotton head coverings, turbans, or specific wrapped headdresses was strictly legally prohibited for the common people.
Right.
The privilege of wearing cotton headwear was a right reserved only for the ruler himself and the highest-ranking nobility.
So, when King Koshkosh tells his steward to give Abd al-Jabir 3 pieces of cotton headwear, he isn't just paying him fair market value for a ewe and a lamb.
Not at all.
He is giving him a highly restricted elite status symbol. He is bestowing a royal privilege.
This realization is the grand aha moment of the entire deep dive. This single revelation forces us to completely reevaluate the historical narrative of the region.
Because it changes the picture of who these kings were.
To understand why, You have to compare this mundane, localized transaction to the broad, sweeping judgments made by outside historians at the time. There's a very famous, widely cited quote from the 16th century Andalusian diplomat and traveler Leo Africanus.
Ah, yes, Leo Africanus.
In his massive geographic survey of Africa, he confidently wrote, quote, "The king of Nubia is always at war."
Always at war. That is such a loaded phrase. It paints this aggressive, chaotic picture of a violent, unstable landscape where rulers are just warlords riding around with swords, constantly pillaging their neighbors.
That's a very convenient narrative for outsiders.
But Leo Africanus is an interesting source. He traveled extensively through North and West Africa, but most modern historians agree he probably never actually set foot in Nubia.
Right. He was likely just repeating rumors and stereotypes he heard from merchants in Cairo or Timbuktu.
And this single crumpled piece of paper completely dismantles that broad, aggressive stereotype. This document proves the king of Nubia was absolutely not always at war. In this moment, he was sitting at his administrative desk, managing highly complex, nuanced micropolitics.
Let's look at the strategy behind the transaction. Think about the names involved. The merchant bringing the goods is Muhammad al-Arab. His very name literally includes the moniker the Arab.
Which means what in this context?
In the context of Old Dongle at this time, this strongly implies he is a traveling nomad, an Arab merchant operating from outside the settled city walls. We actually have accounts from an Ethiopian monk named Sakla Alpha who visited Dongola around 1596.
What did he say?
He clearly noted that the region was populated by distinct groups. You had the indigenous Nubians of Dongola, the local settled Muslims, and the traveling Arab merchants who controlled the desert caravans.
So Muhammad al-Arab arrives in town, bringing these valuable imported textiles, the Ardwayat. King Koshkosh wants those goods, but more importantly, he wants to keep this merchant happy.
Yes, that's the key.
Why? Because the survival of a city-state like Dongola, perched on the edge of the desert, depends entirely on keeping those trade routes open.
By purchasing goods from the traveling merchant and paying him promptly with valuable livestock, the king is securing future trade. He's ensuring that the caravans keep coming.
But the king is smart. He doesn't just hand over his own personal royal sheep from the palace flocks.
That would deplete his own resources.
Exactly. He extracts the necessary livestock from a wealthy local elite, Abd al-Jabir. However, he doesn't just confiscate them by force. He doesn't act like a tyrant.
Because that causes resentment.
Right. He compensates Abd al-Jabir with a highly restricted royal gift, the cotton headwear.
It is political genius on a micro level. The king is acting as the ultimate mediator. On one side, he is greasing the wheels of international commerce, keeping the nomadic merchant satisfied.
And on the other side?
On the other side, he is reinforcing a complex patronage network with his local, settled elite. He is managing a fragile web of relationships through reciprocal gift-giving. He's doing the everyday, unglamorous, but absolutely vital work of sophisticated governance.
I am trying to wrap my head around the sheer scale of the political intelligence here. The king's contribution to this trade, the royal cotton headwear, probably vastly exceeded the actual raw monetary value of a ewe and a lamb.
Undoubtedly. This is the fundamental logic of the gift exchange economy. It's an economic system built not merely on the transactional value of coins or bartered goods, but on mutual interdependence, social ties, and political prestige.
It's about social currency.
Exactly. By giving Abd al-Jabir the cotton headwear, the king is publicly validating his elite status. He is buying loyalty, he is maintaining domestic stability, while simultaneously securing international trade. He is doing exactly what a highly capable, sophisticated head of state does.
So if I'm a listener sitting in traffic right now or folding laundry, I might be asking, what does this all mean for me? Why should I care about the 400-year-old trade of a single sheep and a few shirts?
It's a fair question.
And I think the answer is that it demands we completely shift our perspective on African history.
We are so deeply conditioned to only hear about pre-colonial Africa in broad, sweeping, almost mythological strokes. We learn history from a massive, detached, macro perspective.
We read a paragraph in a textbook about grand empires rising and falling.
We read sweeping summaries about massive religious conquests or the centuries-long sweep of Islamization. Or we skip ahead to the later devastating tragedies of European colonialism and the Turco-Egyptian invasions.
It's always macro history. It's always viewed from a great distance, usually through the biased lens of an outside conqueror or a foreign traveler.
But this single document forces us to zoom all the way in. It drags us down to the micro level. It forces us to see a highly organized, literate, functioning society.
It completely shatters the stereotype of the Dark Age.
It shows us a ruler who isn't just a warlord, but a manager who delegates tasks to trusted stewards. A ruler who navigates a wildly complex, multilingual landscape where Arabic grammar is colliding with Nubian vocabulary and Ottoman trade goods.
A ruler who personally, meticulously manages the local economy to maintain a delicate peace.
Ultimately, it restores agency to the people of the Kingdom of Dongle. They weren't just passively waiting in the historical darkness for the next empire to conquer them.
They were building expansive homes. They were trading for Syrian cotton.
They were negotiating local power dynamics. They were living incredibly rich, complex, deeply human lives.
And it all brings me back to the absolute miracle of how we know this. We have this profoundly important, paradigm-shifting historical document. Wait, no, we have this profound document, and it was found in a rubbish heap.
The irony is amazing.
It wasn't meticulously preserved in a grand, stone royal archive to ensure the king's glorious legacy. It was tossed into a pit alongside broken leather shoes, spent lead musket balls, and discarded cattle horns.
The researchers touch upon a truly fascinating concept regarding this, something they refer to as counter-archival practice.
Counter-archival practice. Break that down for us.
In our modern formal understanding of history, we assume that to preserve something, it must be officially filed away, cataloged, and protected in a library or an archive.
Right, in an acid-free folder.
Exactly. But sometimes, keeping scrap paper in a rubbish heap is its own form of archiving, whether intentional or not.
What do you mean by that?
Well, paper was a remarkably scarce and valuable resource in Old Dongola. They didn't just throw it away lightly. Perhaps someone intentionally kept this rough draft of the king's order in a refuse pile because they fully intended to dig it out later and reuse the material.
Like recycling?
Yeah, maybe to help bind the spine of a new religious book. Or perhaps it was saved simply to be used as tinder to start a cooking fire on a cold desert night, and it just happened to get buried before it could be burned.
So the rubbish heap was actually functional.
By discarding it, they inadvertently preserved it far better than if it had been kept in a royal library that might have been later burned or looted by an invading army.
The trash protected the truth. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey out to the rocky citadel of Old Dongola. Keep exploring, keep questioning the grand narratives, and maybe look twice at what you're throwing in the trash today. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Heliox is produced by Michelle Brucker and Scott Bleakley. It features reviews of emerging research and ideas from leading thinkers, curated under their creative direction with AI assistance for voice, imagery, and composition. Systemic voices and illustrative images of people are representative tools, not depictions of specific individuals. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other episodes, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.